Welcome back inside the Hall of Fame. I'm Booker T, six-time world champ, two-time Hall of Famer. Got my man Brad Gilmore here with me. As always, coming to you from ESPN 97.5, 92.5. And I told you guys we're going to have a very, very special guest stepping inside the Hall of Fame this week, getting his champagne wishes and caviar dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my man, Mr. Brian Gerwitz. What's up, man?
What's up, Buck? How you doing?
Hey,
Thanks for
man.
having me on. Hey,
Hey
Brad.
man, hey man, hey man, we got you here. We're gonna be promoting your new book. There's just one problem. Here it is. Let me make sure we get a good look on that right there so the people can see it. Promoting your new book. But before we get into that, man, how you doing, dog? I ain't talked to you in a long time, bro.
Oh, it's been a while. Yeah, doing well. Back in New York, as you can see from my background. My mute, I could show a lot more of my Mets stuff here in my Mets room. It's kind of like I have a lot of stuff in the background, a lot of money spent on a team
Yeah.
that hasn't won since '86, but we're feeling good this year.
Hey, bro.
Um,
Y'all almost had Carlos, man. Yeah, almost. The signing
Oh,
that never happened.
yeah, well, we got another Carlos Beltran that I know Houston's familiar with, so he's back in the organization. But yeah, we're feeling good. I'm done. We're wrapped on Young Rock, so I had spent the last 5 months or so in Memphis, previous seasons Australia, and now we're done and back on the East Coast.
It's crazy, man. You still look like a kid, bro. You know what I mean?
I did shave before coming on here. I want to point that out.
Got rid of all the gray.
Yeah.
No, you still look the same, man. You still look like that kid that I remember in WWE. And the thing is, you started. Let's start there for a second. You started in WWE in 1999, right?
That's right.
Attitude Era. How old were you when you started in WWE?
I was 26, but as Jericho and Ron Simmons have pointed out to me many, many times, they thought I was a teenager who snuck in, and I had no idea what the hell this person was doing backstage.
Yeah, man. 1999, man, 2023, the business has changed like so much, man, and in so many different ways. From your perspective, what do you see the business at right now, and are we in a good place?
I think we are. I think obviously there was an AEW, there was WCW, but not AEW when I was around, and just there was a period of time, I'll admit, like, because I left the company full time in 2012, and then I worked part time as a consultant until 2015. And then post 2015, I thought, from a fan perspective, my interest started waning a little bit. Maybe because I just needed a break from it, or maybe I just didn't find everything all that compelling having done it. But now, like, especially, obviously, Book better than anyone, WrestleMania season, things just ramp up. Not that, we'll always hear it should be that 12 months of the year and all that kind of thing. But like when you look at a bloodline storyline like that, that has been in existence for the better part of 9 to 12 months or whatever it is. It seems to me that WWE is clicking on all cylinders. I don't want to, because I'm not there. So I don't want to say like, oh, well, things have opened up since Vince is gone, and he doesn't have his thumb on everything, and everything is not so tightly scripted and tightly approved. And as you remember, there would be this almost weird doctor's office like atmosphere outside of Vince's office every Monday and Tuesday, as all the agents are there trying to get their matches approved. The writers are trying to get their promos approved, their backstage scenes approved. And then you have performers trying to get the approved things changed. And it was just all funneled into one office. So I don't know what, it always seems like looser is better. And things do seem a lot looser. I know when we worked together, for instance, it was basically like going to camp. It wasn't working. It was like, great, I get to work with Booker and Charmel, Booker and Goldust, Booker and Rock, whatever it is. Here's the general principle. Like when we went to 7-Eleven to do the stuff with the Slurpee and Goldust, it was just like, okay, I gave Goldust a couple lines, kind of about the wiener and all that, but otherwise, you scaring kids off and looking for Booker T cups, and like none of that stuff was scripted. You just did it. And it was awesome. And I feel like we're getting back to that a little bit now. It feels like a lot less like people are reading a book report in third grade, and more like naturally how people are speaking. And the storylines don't seem to be rushed or changing either. I mean, not everything is perfect, but for me as a viewer, at least in WWE, because I don't really get to catch much AEW, just seems like a lot more fun.
You know, one thing I always thought about, and this is true coming from the heart. I always thought, man, the business lost a jewel when you walked away from the business, because you helped so many guys like find themselves. You know what I mean? I must say, you know, the stuff that you did for me, there's no way I could have pulled off that stuff. You know, I mean, balderdash and all that stupid stuff. You know, I swear, man, there's no way I could have pulled it off. And there's so many guys missed out on having a chance at working with you. Do you think that time from 99 to 2012, working with so many great talent, kind of spoil you a little bit? You know what I mean?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for saying that. I really do appreciate it. And I remember specifically right before you were about to go live, I think, like, hey, Booker, shouldn't you say balderdash? Isn't that something a king would say? And you're like, what does balderdash mean? I'm like, oh, well, balderdash. I don't know. It's just something people exclaim when they're angry about something and see it as nonsense. Like, great, I'll say it. Balderdash. But yeah, it was such a great period of time. You know, it really is. It's just spoiled rotten in terms of like all the stars and all the talents that were available, you know, to work with. And now I'm feeling like, I'm sure you feel too when watching it. It's like, wow, all the people that I worked with just regular basis are now all legends. I feel very ancient now watching the show, and it's like, Edge, he's a legend. And I'm like, well, I'm older than Edge. What the hell's going on here?
You know, you talk though about like the product now and the storylines, and they almost seem like they're getting a second to breathe. And in your book, you talked about how the McMahons have a great patience for eating pancakes, and if maybe they would apply that to the stories sometimes, to the television show, right? I think that we're getting the methodical eating of the pancake, if you will, to use your analogy. We're letting things go, even if they don't seem like, man, that's not connecting yet, but they're giving it a second to breathe.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, working with Vince, because I didn't work, you know, I worked with Triple H. He was not really like on the creative team, but he was always, you know, in the area. You know, usually the method was, you know, we would work with Vince. Vince would tell us what, you know, he wants to do. I'd get the call from Stephanie Sunday night right before going to TV, talking about Triple H's displeasure with it. A lot of times justified, sometimes, you know, the other way. But it was, and then how are we going to figure it out? We'll figure it out at the show. Okay, great. But, you know, the one thing you have to say for Vince, you know, he is who he is, and he's done a lot of, obviously, you know, understating it, his impact in the business, but he wasn't always a patient man. You know, he was very much in the now. Let's, you know, the worst example being, great, you know, at the end of the episode, Triple H will look at Kane and say, Kane, you're a murderer. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what's the deal with that? You know, how should I know? You guys write this stuff. You figure it out. But we're doing it on Monday. Click. And it's like, well, like, especially now, like working on Young Rock and working on other, you know, actual television shows. Not that I, you know, didn't work on television shows before, but not that you'd need to work on a television show to know that it's like, well, these type of things need to be planned out, even if it's not exactly, you know, knowing it's going to change, but at the very least have a game plan. It's very dangerous to go out there on TV with no game plan and just like, he's a murderer this week, or we'll blow up the limousine this week, and then we'll figure out how we're going to get out of it later, or that kind of thing. You know, I cited this recently, you know, the Orton getting booted from Evolution is seen less fondly than Batista turning on Triple H in Evolution, because the Batista storyline was planned out and we were able to really take our time with it, knowing that, you know, that big thumbs down moment was going to happen leading into WrestleMania 21, I think, versus the Orton thing, which, again, to cite it, it was, well, like, wait, why is Triple H booting Orton out of Evolution? Because he has the title? Yep, law of the jungle, old lion jealous of the young lion, and there is truth to that. But, you could let that build for a little bit. The cool thing with Sammy and with Roman and with the Usos and Heyman and, now Kevin Owens and all that is it's been gestating for quite some time, and they're not resting on their laurels as far as like, well, we don't need to advance the story this week. We can just have a 3-segment match and that will cover it. It's like, no, they're not doing that. Every week the storyline's advancing. Every week there's a new twist. You would come off, I think, in a lesser year, Owens and Sammy would hug on Raw last Monday and be like, bygones are bygones. Let's go kick the Bloodline's ass. They didn't do that. Owens, brought up history, and there was a lot of, the phrase "no one's going to remember that," was bandied about a lot back in, WWE in my time. Sometimes true, sometimes not. But thankfully, viewers, I feel, love to be rewarded for their investment in watching. And it's easy to just like tear it all up and start new. But when you actually like, oh yeah, that did happen. That did happen not only last week, but 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It feels good. You're getting rewarded for your time and investment. So I think it's great.
That emotional connection. I think fans used to be able to, have a chance to go on that ride, and you always had the payoff, which was, the match. But getting to that match was so much fun. Running around, when I first got to WWE, working with Stone Cold Steve Austin, doing the character building stuff, it made me who I was. And I watched the Talent Today, and I was wondering, you say you watch, Raw a little bit. I know you're busy, man. But do you see, as far as the talent, as far as, I consider, the guys back in the day pretty good actors. What do you think about the acting chops of the guys you're seeing out there on television today, outside the bloodline, and guys like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens? Those guys are A-listers. Who else may be on your list as far as guys that may have that one thing, that je ne sais quoi?
Yeah, well, and by the way, another long-term storyline, just to backtrack for a second, is you and Goldust, which emerged from him, you joining the NWO and him trying to stop you. And that led to this tag team run, which Bubba Dudley, of all people, who, we all love Bubba, but,
not all of us.
Well, he's not exactly always, effusive with praise. But when you guys won the tag team titles, he pulled me aside, very out of character, and said, "Hey, man, wow, you got all of you, but you got that audience to care. That was really, really well done."
Yeah, they cried.
I think Bubba himself cried when you and Dustin won the tag team titles. But yeah, I mean, you see it like, obviously, like a quick example is, and not as a segue, but just as a, to answer the question, is like, I thought Becky Lynch had, great acting chops. And, that's what led to this conversation we had. Like, hey, she would be great as Cyndi Lauper. I mean, obviously she can't do the voice and she can't do the accent, but wouldn't it be cool if she could? And then that led to a conversation. And sure enough, Becky worked with an acting coach and everything, but you couldn't have a more diametrically opposite voice, Becky Lynch and her accent, to Cyndi Lauper and her accent. And she nailed it and she pulled it off. I think Rollins too is, showing great chops and really being comfortable with his character. I really like watching Bayley in action, especially seeing like her transformation from, the hugger with, the inflatable going to just look someone. And it doesn't always happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight with Sammy on WWE. Didn't happen overnight with Owens. Even Becky wearing the, the Mad Max goggles, for a while when she first came out. And, it's always, and I know I'm cherry picking kind of the obvious ones that are just popping in my head, but, it always seemed to me that Bray Wyatt is one of those guys that might be in the wrong medium, even, because sometimes it's so hard to translate what he does as a performer and actor into, okay, now I need to try to pin your shoulders for a count of 3 or make you submit. It's like one of those things that it's a little bit of a disconnect. You're talking about, it's always like Taker always kind of straddled that line of, I want to take your soul and bury you within the pits of hell, but I also want to win a championship belt.
Yeah.
But it's always a pleasure watching Bray in action.
The one thing, I always talk about how this business has changed so much, and you was a part of it. You got a chance to experience it. Wrestler's Court. That's something that's for a foregone thought in the business now. They don't even think about Wrestler's Court. It's like if you do that now, it's like you're hazing or you're bullying. It's one of those type of deals. Talk to me about your experience as far as Wrestler's Court, as well as, is it something you think that's needed in our business?
I don't know if, a giant assembly of every talent in the company, including referees, announcers, caterers, seamstresses, like all gathering in a room to basically crap all over you for 30 minutes or maybe even longer is necessary. Might be more diplomatic ways to, handle a problem internally.
Come on, man.
The pomp and circumstance, but yeah, it's certainly nothing that can be away with today. But like as I wrote about, I found it at the end to be a really positive experience, because the underlying message of all of that is they wouldn't go through with this if they didn't care a little bit, and some people might not care, might care negatively and some care positively. But if this was like, as JBL would always say, like, I'm not going to learn your name, you're going to be gone in 2 weeks. Well, if they felt that about me, the Wrestler's Court, literally the SmackDown after WrestleMania 17, and the biggest WrestleManias of all time, and I'm like, feeling pretty damn good about myself, because I've considered creatively and everything else WrestleMania 17 to be a vast improvement over WrestleMania 2000. To get brought down significantly, not a peg, but significantly 2 days after that event in Oklahoma City, the night we're having Stone Cold Steve Austin freshly off his heel turn, biggest heel turn potentially, outside of maybe Andre the Giant in WWE history, beating up JR in his hometown of Oklahoma City. And Stone Cold is amongst every single talent talking about, this Flash action figure that was gifted to me in order to get more TV time for Edge and Christian. As ridiculous as that sounds, that does mean at least somebody cares. And somebody's like, we got to get through to this kid because we feel he's going to be here for a while and he's going down a path that he needs to change lanes in. So, yeah, I don't know. Like you said, Booker, I don't know. Like, there's no way that would be, a thing that can happen today. I don't think, as far as certainly with the language that was used, everything else that went along with it. The fact that I asked Pat Patterson and Jack Lanza to get cigarettes afterwards. I smoked a cigarette in my life before, but I felt I needed it. I mean, that was that harrowing experience for me. But yeah, it would be interesting if there was a version of it.
Oh, my God. I just told the kid before you go, Brad, I just told the kid just yesterday I didn't need to know his name because he probably wasn't going to be here more than a couple of weeks.
That could be inspiring. That could make people go, oh, some people will back down and say, oh, my God, I can't believe Booker or JBL said that to me. But the right response to that is, oh, you're going to know my name, all right.
Exactly. Yeah.
You'll know exactly who I am. That's how you should respond to that.
Yeah. You're exactly right. Go ahead, Brett.
When you were talking about Wrestler's Court in the book, again, the book is great, by the way. Really great job in it. I mean, it's definitely your voice. I mean, I'm chuckling as I'm laughing at certain jokes that you have in the book. But when you talk about Wrestler's Court, it was Bob Holly, Hardcore Holly, who kind of got you into that predicament to begin with. And from everything I hear about Bob Holly back in the day, not the easiest guy at times, not the warmest guy. But I met Bob, I don't know, Book, when we had him down at Reality Wrestling a few times, like the greatest guy, nicest guy, sends you a text message with a smiley face. So like, how did your relationship evolve with Bob after that day?
Well, I mean, immediately after that day, as I wrote, like I went to him either later that day or at the next TV. And I said, Bob, after all that, are we good? And he just went, no. And that was, that was that. But I think just through, just sheer amount of time. And by the way, I know where Bob was coming from. And by the way, too, I've had similar text conversations with Bob recently. And I'm like, Bob Holly just sent me a freaking emoji smiley face at the end after wishing my family a happy holiday season. I mean, this is awesome. But Bob was feeling what, a lot of veterans feel sometimes in the company. And he said this to me as much. I mean, he finally broke down, not broke down like Bob Holly's crying or anything, but like broke down as far as like, all right, I'm going to take the facade off for a second of angry Bob Holly and actually talk to you like a human being. And it's tough. I'm busting my ass. I'm working really hard. And I see people coming in, people that you're palling around with basically, and seeing them get the spot I feel I deserve. And that's why, that's where his frustration, amongst other things, I'm sure, injuries and everything else. But like, that was like the crux of his issue with me, really, was like, for some inexplicable reason that I cannot fathom, you have the pencil in Vince's ear. And I feel like, you're palling around with your buddies, Edge and Christian and Jericho and Kurt and all those guys. And I'm stuck here, opening up Velocity. Like, what the hell? That should be me. And I'm pissed off about it. And that was really, the crux of his problem. But like, we worked together on stuff. We ended up working on stuff. And he had, he always, was legitimate. Like you see Bob in the ring post, race car driver character and scale, carrying the scale to the ring and everything after that. You knew he was legit. He was like a legit badass, legit tough guy. And he was entertaining too. And I just think like with him, and even and a lot of veterans too, like, there was like the period of time where it's like, you're still here. I guess you might not be such a horrible, poison to the business after all. And I think it kind of just broke down after that because, you're there, as as Booker knows, 1 year in WWE is like, 3 years or more in the entertainment business on other television shows. And if you could survive there for a decade plus, ultimately, I think for the most part, I think after a while, you gain some level of respect.
I mean, you just hit it on the head right there, gaining some level of respect. I mean, even though you was seventh most powerful person in the WWE, I think over that 13-year period, a lot of guys got, bruised, battered, and torn, man. But you was one of those guys who was able to navigate your way through all of those landmines to where you really became one of the most respected guys and literally one of our go-to guys, as far as guy that we wanted to work with. Was it, you believing in yourself, like that 2-week thing, I don't need to know your name, was it that you saying, man, I'm going to show you guys how good I really am?
Yeah, that was definitely a motivating factor to it because, you gravitate and become friends with some people. But the vast majority of the WWE locker room in 1999 was not looking to make friends with some teenage looking 26-year-old who like, I don't know what I was thinking. Like in fact, it might be even behind me. I should find it. But like, I'd carry around a notebook and put like stickers on it that I just like, I'd be like trying to get like a wrestling sticker at Kmart or something like that. Put 50 cents in, with those things that you push and you outcomes. But sometimes I'm like, the wrestling ones, they don't have wrestling ones. I'll just stick a Christina Aguilera sticker on my notebook or Britney Spears or something like that. The artist of the time. No idea why. There was a period of time which I wrote about, which I walked around backstage with a yo-yo for some reason. I thought like, that would be an endearing character trait. I'm the guy. It's the guy with the yo-yo. certainly no one's going to want to take the yo-yo when a guy can't even do tricks with it, by the way. He could just do basic up and down and not even that good. That didn't last long. But yeah, there was definitely, I wanted to prove something after a while. And also specifically for me, I wanted to prove that I'm not just the comedy guy. I wanted to try to do serious stuff, and like being able to work on Batista turning on Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Jericho, that whole saga. A lot of the things with Cena, even as Kurt Angle's character evolved and became more serious in some of his storylines. There was always a desire to be like, he's not just the comedy guy. I enjoyed doing that. I came from a comedy writing background before joining. But like, okay, you're going to build to Jeff Hardy versus The Undertaker. How are you going to make people believe that? What's something you could write that would really like make you invested in Jeff more so? Obviously Jeff is naturally charismatic and you're going to be rooting for him anyway, but what can you do to contribute to really like put some legitimacy into the storyline, and make people believe? And that's what I took pride in, just as much as doing anything with comedy. And Booker, you obviously too, you went through very serious storylines and very hilariously comedic ones. Yeah. I'm sure as a performer, you took pride in both of them, being able to be so versatile and being able to do, across the board. You need me to do something serious? Great. I'll do something. I'll be a legit threat and do something serious. You need me to run around a grocery store or a church, with Steve Austin, that kind of thing. I'll knock that out of the park too. Whatever you can be, I'm gonna absolutely destroy.
Those are some of my favorite times, taking those smallest roles, like me running from the Boogeyman. That was some of my favorite stuff, the Boogeyman. It was flawless. It was classic stuff. You ever thought about, I know you got a good life, I'm sure. And the wrestling business is hectic, is a rat race. Yep, especially the travel. You ever thought about coming back?
I never really, I sort of cheat. I cheat because I go to WWE shows whenever they're, so oftentimes when I'm in LA, they happen to be in LA. I live in New York. I've been to the past 2 Brooklyn Raws when we were doing SmackDown in Memphis. I went backstage there, and it's not the same as working there, obviously. But you do get a nice little taste of it, and it does like scratch an itch a little bit, and occasionally, very rarely, there'll be talents that will call me and say, hey, what's something I could say for this? And that satisfies an itch. But what I love doing, in terms of working, in terms of development for television shows, for Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia's $7 production company, is I can have my cake and eat it too, as far as being able to work on brand new wrestling adjacent projects. Whether that's, Tales from the Territories on Vice, Young Rock, there are a few other ones in the works coming out, dramas, docuseries across the board. It's like, this is really like the sweet spot, being able to work on, pursue your passion with wrestling and instill all that knowledge that you've accrued over the course of a 15-year career, et cetera, but channel it into something different. So there's not like, I don't like watch, like MJF I'm a big fan of at AEW, and watching like any favorites and go, gosh, I wish I could go back there, because it's like, similar I'm not compare myself to The Rock, but as a poor man, destitute man's version of The Rock, when he left to go to Hollywood, and people asked him when he's going to come back, he's like, well, look, I can always come back when I want, but in terms of doing it as a career, I've done it. I've had the satisfaction of doing it, so I don't feel like I need to go back and do it again. And I kind of feel the same way. It's like, yeah, I've done that. If and when Rock ever comes back to WWE, I know I'll be contributing promo wise to that. And I get to do all these other projects that are, that have a love of wrestling involved. So that's a very long-winded answer.
It's all good.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. No, just to piggyback off something real quick, and then I'm gonna let you get that question in.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what Bob Holly felt. I just want to go back there for a second because I remember coming into, I can't remember, it was a restaurant or something. You were sitting with Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho was getting all kind of play, all kind of airtime. And I was like, the hell's going on here? So I just want to put that out there.
No, but you're right, because at the time I never realized, I wasn't savvy enough to realize the implications of hanging out with Jericho or going to Dave and Buster's with Christian and Edge, and how that looks. And one of Vince's things is always like, perception is reality. Even if you're hanging out with these talents and you're not doing it at the expense of other talents, but because we're all kind of like, we have the same taste in movies. Jericho would come into the writer's room and we'd just be talking about Attack of the Clones for 20 minutes or Spinal Tap or something. We're not talking about how, I'm going to make you're going to be in the main event this week and then you're going to headline this pay-per-view next week. We just be talking about like freaking Count Dooku or something.
That's what we thought. That's what we thought.
That's the thing that, I was not nearly savvy enough to
I give you that.
Out like how bad that looks.
Yeah. I give you
of others in the locker room. And that's one of the reasons why I went to court. It wasn't about the action figure. It was Ed Christian and I went to court together because it was like, why are you so chummy? Why are you going down to St. Mark's Place in New York specifically and buying sunglasses for these talents? And originally, like in 99, 2000, it was like, because these guys are talking to me. And they're like giving me the time of day. And we were all born the same year. And we're talking about movies and stuff.
Well, you know what?
You ever seen that movie Life? Where Eddie Murphy tell Martin Lawrence?
A long time ago.
I noticed you and Mr. Wilkins been getting mighty, mighty friendly. Y'all gonna be a new couple or something.
Yeah, that was apt comparison.
Well, and the thing is, what Booker doesn't realize is when I started at his promotion in Texas City, here in Houston, I had a heat with the whole locker room because about 2 months in, Booker invites me out to a golf trip because we live close to each other. And then boom, I got heat for a year from the locker room thinking, oh my God, there's a ring announcer who's been around for 2 months is going to golf with the Hall of Famer. So I understand, Brian. But it's interesting. It's interesting your relationship with The Rock because obviously you work with Seven Bucks Productions right now, and Young Rock's such a fun series, man. I think it really hits that wrestling fan, right? I mean, I love it. Whenever I first saw it, I love the concept and how it was all put together. But I think what I found interesting about reading your book was not only did you and Rock work closely together while you were in WWE, he had a large responsibility for you even coming into WWE after meeting him at an MTV shoot. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the introduction. The Jenny McCarthy sitcom that I worked on as a writer had gotten unceremoniously canceled before we could bring George Hamilton back to life. With 4 people who are diehard Jenny on NBC fans. That was a thing that was going to happen. And I was unemployed. Obviously my writing partner and I, we were writing spec scripts and taking meetings and coming close and that kind of thing. But unemployed in between shows. And my sister was a PA at MTV and basically said, hey, they're doing these wrestling specials for SummerSlam 99. They need a writer. Nobody here watches the show enough to know these characters. Do you mind? What if you did it? I recommended you. And I wrote some samples. They hired me. I flew in. And that was where I first met Rock, was, writing this show where the wrestlers, in this case, Mick Foley, Triple H, and Rock, discuss their favorite music videos, which, as I wrote about, these guys had never seen, in the cases of Foley, had never heard of any of these artists, that supposedly their favorite music videos. So you had to write in their voice and write as their character. And obviously being familiar and fans of their characters, I was able to do that. And that's when, I remember Rock looking over, what I had written and being like, oh, this is pretty good. You only used the first person only once, as opposed to saying the Rock this, the Rock that every single time. And he's like, do you ever think about writing for WWF? Which I had never had. And one thing led to another. A couple writers leave to go to WCW. And then next thing I know, I'm in Stamford, Connecticut. But that was definitely the turning point. That was from that came from being a fan to then actually working in the industry. That Rock was a huge part of that.
I tell you, you got a hell of a legacy, even though you never took one bump.
Wait, well, but he did. But he did. He did. If you get further in the book, I think Shane McMahon said, we all got to go bump, and then Bubba Ray had something to do with it, right?
That's true. Yeah. Without spoiling too much.
Yeah,
Shane,
exactly.
The writers through drills, and then this was before you were even in the company, Booker. This was like, I think 2000, December of 2000. So I'd been there for like 1 year. Oh no, it was earlier than that, because Tommy Blacha was still there, and Tommy left in April of 99. So yeah, it must have been literally like a month or two in my tenure, where we were snowed in Baltimore. And all of a sudden, without, again, I'm bringing up Bubba Dudley, but ended up taking a second row power bomb in our snowed in SmackDown stage. So one bump, one untelevised bump. So I'll give myself that.
Doesn't count if it wasn't on TV. Okay, it doesn't. That don't count. Brad, he slipped and fell a few times.
Slipped and fell. You threw me off the stage. It's a little bit different than slipping and falling.
That's not considered a bump.
I'm considering it a bump.
I'm with you, Brian. I'm with you.
You know what? I say that because, like I say, your journey, man, you've gotten a chance to work with so many different guys. And normally when from my perspective, when I've had a chance to work with so many great talent, I've taken a lot of bumps, along that journey. Why was it so important, for you to put this all down on paper and get it out there so people can actually see and hear those stories that actually happened, along your journey?
It was one of those things where, like, I always felt, even when I was there at WWE, I always, in the back of my mind, was thinking, like, how do I, because I'm not going to work here forever, I don't think, but I'd love to be able to translate this experience into something, whether it's a TV show. It turns out Rock's story seemingly is a little bit more attractive and people wanting to see than, say, mine. So I translated to Young Rock. So if it wasn't going to be a television show, like, maybe the most direct thing would be a book, which is something I'd never tried before. And it was more my style too, because I could take my time, I could do it. I don't have to, like, be on camera or be, in front of a, microphone or anything like that, because, I'm not a natural performer or anything. So it's just like, was something I felt like I've told these stories so many times to just friends, a couple of podcasts, but never really out in the open before. And then there were some stories I'd never told anybody before. So I just figured, like, this would be a good opportunity to get this all down on paper and just be able to have, like, especially because when I started, as you know, and when you started as well, like, you never thought any of these things would become, you don't know what a meme is. When we were doing stuff with you and Goldust, let's say, it's like, oh, maybe they'll replay this on the 10th, 15th, 20th anniversary show, and maybe people will remember it fondly. But there was no social media, and there was no, like, oh, I could just go on YouTube and watch a compilation, Booker T's most hilarious moments. Like, it was like you did it and it was done. So a lot of that period that I was there was during that time. And so I just wanted to be able, even the times when you could see it on YouTube and what have you, you don't know the behind the scenes story behind it. So yeah, I felt it was like a good way to express, myself, and also just a fun way to tell all these stories and put it all in one compilation. Lucky to do it.
Well, one thing right now, the social media world and the Attitude Era, which you was a huge part of, it's almost like immortalized us, man. It's made us like gods in so many different ways. I mean, we got cons, where we can make money and stuff. I mean, we got guys out there doing one-man shows like Mick Foley, Taker's even doing one-man shows. And now you got a bunch of stuff that you got to, to be able to go out there right here in the book, guys. There's just one problem. That's it. by Brian Gervais. Are you thinking about doing a one-man show, getting out there and getting on the road and, you know, telling something? Because right now, man, telling these stories is hot everywhere. I'm serious.
Yeah, well, that would be interesting. And by the way, the love I have for you, Booker, you're the only person up until this very moment that I've never corrected on the Gerwitz last name.
Gerwitz.
Gerwitz,
right?
Gerwitz.
Okay, all right. Yeah, all right. My bad.
But I'll let that go for, you know, the only reason I'm even bringing it up is because you said I didn't take a bump when Bubba.
It's called a receipt, brother.
Yeah. I think I would need, I would, you know, to do something like that. That's interesting. That definitely would put me out of my comfort zone. I think I would need, and I do have some, you know, like I'd need some new material, you know, stuff that wasn't in the book, because like most of the greatest hits are in the book. So that would be something interesting to think about, you know, because it's something like working at WWE, like writing a book, that I never thought would ever happen and never even considered it. But, you know, going back and not just as a shameless segue, the Attitude Era, being able to do the Attitude Era on Young Rock, which is where we're at right now,
right,
is so much fun. You know, being able to, you know, just get a little taste of it, because where we're at right now is like 99, 2000, 98 through 2000. So we recreated Rock's ladder match with Triple H from SummerSlam at the Garden in 98. We're, you know, getting into WrestleMania 2000 and the time Rock hosted SNL. There's so much stuff we can do. And it's really one of the main reasons, and I'm not just saying this, like if we get a season 4, we got to bring Booker T onto Young Rock.
Yeah, I mean, man. I've been waiting. I've been waiting on the call.
I know, we just haven't hit 2001 yet, but we're getting there. That's going to be some of the most fun things we could ever do.
Yeah. And our friend Luke Hawks is Steve Austin on the show, I believe. On Young Rock. Brian, now this is not related directly to your book, but I have a question, because you in 1985 you were 11 years of age, I believe. Is this correct? Around there?
Yeah.
Okay. So in 1985 you were a big Roddy Piper fan, but I just have to know, for you as a kid in 85, who was bigger for you? Was Roddy Piper bigger, or was Marty McFly bigger?
Well, I mean, I see you're obviously biased with.
I have a little bit of a bias.
Of course, yeah.
You know, Back to the Future came out that year. I saw it in the theater twice at least. Saw Back to the Future 2 on opening night. Saw Back to the Future 3 on opening night, despite the fact that they basically spoiled Back to the Future 3 with the trailer at the end of Back to the Future 2. It's like, why are you showing Marty with Jennifer on the bench? We know he gets back. Take that shot out. But either way, I mean, I would go to magazine stores and check out Pro Wrestling Illustrated and look at the back, the arena reports that would show, like, you know, all the house show results. And if Roddy wasn't pinned, because I know most of his matches ended in DQ, I'd buy the magazine just because I was happy that he wasn't pinned, and, you know, take that home. And if there was like anything, an inside, you know, the most loved, most hated rankings, all of that stuff. If Piper appeared in those rankings, which he often did, that's the excuse I needed to, you know, to buy that magazine, much less WWF magazine. So yeah, I'd give Roddy a little bit of an edge over Marty McFly, even though obviously 11-year-old in 1985 is going to love Marty McFly. Yeah. I mean, I don't cosplay at all, but I did put on the life jacket gimmick and, you know, put on whatever I needed to put on to get a Pepsi Perfect from Back to the Future 2 at New York Comic Con several years ago, which I have in my apartment still. So it's closer than you might think, I guess, would be the answer.
That was a long answer. Hey, man, there's just one problem. What do you want people to take away from the book?
I think, you know, it's a great question, and I don't think it's one I've ever answered before. I mean, I think it's, you know, at the end of the day, you can't judge a book by its cover. I mean, you can judge my book by its cover because it's a delightful cover.
Great cover.
But at the end of the day, you have the ability to, I know it's very it's a Back to the Future quote. You set your mind to it, you could accomplish anything. But you just because you don't fit naturally, you're a square peg in a round hole, or whatever cliche you want to make. You write your own story and you control your own destiny. And you can have all the things working against you as far as like why you shouldn't be a writer in wrestling, beyond the old school mentality of writers have ruined the business, et cetera, et cetera. And you've never been in a fight and you blah, blah, blah. If you truly open your mind up to, well, that's what they say, but that's not what I say. And you make it you put your effort. Now I'm quoting Hoosiers. You put your effort into being the absolute best you could be. I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game. In my book, we're going to be winners. It's like you really can't be dictated to by other people. Like when you read these stories, I think you'll see that there was every reason to just throw up your hands, for me to throw up my hands and go, all right, I'm tapping out. I'm not wanted here. Or I'm dealing with a boss who is, let's just say, highly unpredictable and causing me to punch holes in my wall and lose sleep. But it's rewarding and I'm enjoying it. And I'm basically writing my own story here, despite what should be happening to me. I'm changing the game for myself. I know it's a very inarticulate, bad answer, but it's really what I do want to take away is you can't be told, you can't map everything out perfectly. That's how I kind of end the book. I wanted to be a sitcom writer like my uncle was. I did do that for a couple of years, but then life, changed directions on me. And what turned out was, I think, better than had I been a sitcom writer in Hollywood for 25 years, because I never would have had these stories to tell, these relationships that I've had and still have to this day. And just this, much less the relationship with Rock and everything else in this job. You really just got to be open to any and all challenges and take them on with gusto.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Brian Gewirtz, right?
Oh, thank you, Booker.
There's just one problem. That was going to be my last question, but I got one more for you. I just got one more before I get you out of here. Perception, normally it's reality in this world that we live in today, especially, with the social media world having to, want to comment on everything. You got a chance to walk it, live it, breathe it, experience it, that WWE machine. Your takeaway from WWE after 13 years. Give me your thoughts.
My takeaway was, it was wild. It was unpredictable. It was at times extraordinarily frustrating. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't really have changed the experience, because it was super rewarding and satisfying and something that I love to be a part of. I was definitely not Al Bundy, basically oh, I got to sell shoes at this damn mall. It was all said and done. I was like, damn, it's kind of like the bump you allege I never took. At the once I felt it, I was like, you know what? This feels amazing. This hurts. And I don't think I should be doing this, but I feel completely invigorated by it. I feel like this was something I was meant to do for one night only. But yeah, as far as WWE is concerned, it was an absolute gamut of emotions, positive and negative. But at the, when I left it, I felt great.
If you had to do it all over again, would you?
Oh, no, not at all.
That's what I was looking for.
No, I'm joking. I would. It was an awesome experience.
Man, I want to thank you for giving me some time, man, promoting the new book. There's just one problem, guys. You got to get it. It's definitely worth the read. And if you want to, get it from, the man who actually walked through it, see it through his eyes, get the book. Do it now. Like I always say, I do it for you. Brad, I appreciate you for stepping inside the Hall of Fame again, getting your champagne wishes and caviar dreams. Any last words?
Well, first of all, Booker, thank you. Thank you for the endorsement. Thank you for the endorsement on the back of the book, which I know I reached out to you and you were more than happy to oblige. I really appreciate that. Thank you for having me on. And I would just say this Friday, season finale of Young Rock. So check it out. It's a hell of a season ender.
Oh, yeah. Bradley, I appreciate you as always for doing all the heavy lifting. Guys, ESPN 975-925, Hall of Fame, as always. Peace.